All right, Tim Hayes, we are here. Episode 1 of what we are. I think this is on the whiteboard. We got the Sharpie out, and we're putting Sport Ballers up there.
Sport Ballers is good for a variety of reasons. Bill, I'm so stoked to be able to talk sports with you. I'm sure cycling's a sport. We'll talk about that. But more importantly, that's what the part spin is for, because I love sports. You like sports. We kind of have different opinions naturally, where I'm always right, you're always wrong. But I am excited to see where this goes. And I love games. I grew up with sports games, and sometimes I feel as a cycling fan and with a podcast that I have to kind of shelve my love for something else. And then every now and then you hear like, oh, you like hockey? Or you like basketball? Like as an example, Spencer and I are both really into soccer. We both still have season tickets to Minnesota United, even though he's in Massachusetts, I'm in Florida. And it was great to make that connection, which actually made the bond over cycling that much stronger, because you could talk about things on a bike ride that weren't about cycling, which is great and hard to do for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and I think, and I understand it, and I sort of was in the same position as I grew up playing sports. I played basketball forever, and later in life I started playing hockey, and it was actually doing all those things before I even got into cycling. Those were the things that I was following. I had collected baseball cards as a kid. I was into it big time, and you get into cycling, and having now covered cycling for over a decade, I feel like I can finally out myself as a sports fan, which I'd been doing more and more. But it was always, I think, with a lot of the people who get into cycling, it's kind of this safe haven from not wanting to be involved in team sports. And this was something different. So then the problem with that is that then they a lot of people then look askew at team sports, the whole, what we're calling this show, is a pejorative in the cycling world, the whole sport ball thing. But I think much like, other things that start out as pejoratives that teams then, or people then kind of adopt as their own. I think that's we're taking it back.
I guess I just like being well-rounded, right? Like I like trying to know as much as possible about things. Granted, it will make my brain explode, but the idea being that like you really want to know. I love sports. I want to know everything about it. I try to watch as much, but there's only so many hours of the day, so to be able to talk about it's kind of cool. I do like the idea here, Bill, is that we kind of have a potpourri of just what's going on in the sports world. I don't have, I have ESPN. I don't watch ESPN regularly. I don't watch SportsCenter. I just try to watch the game, have fun. So obviously we both have some podcasts we listen to, but it's more of just, overall the game. So what we were thinking is, because we already had our opinions shared on a couple of these things on NHL Stanley Cup finals, we're going to also talk NBA finals. I want to talk a lot about basketball just for a variety of reasons. And then also Women's World Cup, because soccer is awesome and the U.S. is going to probably go out in the semifinals. But we...
Whoa, the first hot take of the show, the premier hot take.
I do want to start off with just talking a little bit about the city I love to hate, St. Louis, winning the Stanley Cup final. Pretty stoked for anybody that hasn't won a championship to win a championship. So as much as our friends in Boston, Meyerson and Spencer and Alex that really wanted the Bees to win, I understand. But from a sporting sake, I was pretty excited for the friends in St. Louis to be able to host the Cup. That's awesome.
Yeah. And for me, I have no skin in the game, and that's kind of a lot of it. I moved from city to city a lot growing up, so I don't have a lot of super strong allegiances versus other people, but born in Philadelphia, never really lived there. I have no memories of it other than going back and visiting my grandparents and aunts and uncles and that kind of stuff, and they were all huge Philadelphia fans. So that's kind of what I got into. But then anywhere I move, I was at the first Wild game ever. It was awesome. The Norm sucks chance. I was there to see it live and in person, so I get all these, and then moving to DC, becoming a Caps fan and a Wizards fan, and, pretty much stopped there.
Would you say that you're a Capitals fan in hockey?
I think that I am. And it was really exciting following them, and it was also always kind of fun just not fun, but the frustration of the Capitals before they made that win that much more. But for this, I would say that I was kind of pulling for the Blues. And as I said, having no skin in this game, it kind of comes down to what Wall Street Journal sports reporter and cycling aficionado Jason Gay always jokes about. He's like, there's a kid who's like 6 months old right now who has never experienced Boston winning a championship.
Yeah. Well, it's ridiculous. Let me give you just a little history of Tim real quick when it comes to NHL. So I am kind of reverse. I grew up in Minnesota North Stars, live and ride. 1993, my heart was taken from me when they moved to Dallas. And then I kind of just became a de facto Chicago Blackhawks fan because granted, they were the opposite of the North Stars. They were the closest team. And I just kind of followed Belfour and that gang for a little while, and it was fun. I liked the colors. I liked the jersey at the time. I then moved to Chicago in 2005. I picked up a job at the United Center. The Blackhawks were absolutely horrible, and so I was a suite attendant. So the Bulls were selling out, so I worked during the Bulls games, and then during the Blackhawks games, I would be the one that volunteered to stay because there'd be like 2 suites, so I could watch the Blackhawks lose 10-2, but I loved it.
That's great.
And then they started winning. And then I also became a little bit more aware to like, the Blackhawks is a great name. Everything about it is great. Change the jersey. Yeah. Like I'm finally at the point that just change the jersey. The appropriation, it's just over. There's other logos that they can do. So I and also the fans of the Blackhawks started driving me nuts because they started winning too often. And then you tell people you're a Blackhawks fan and then they're like, oh, you're jumping on the bandwagon. And I'm like, no, I was there through thick and thin. I was there during the Hobby Bullen years. And then all of a sudden I decided I don't like the Blackhawks anymore. And now I've been kind of this like vagabond, but I really like the coach of the Blackhawks, Joel Quenneville, who now is with the Florida Panthers. So I've decided I'm all in on the Florida Panthers about 2 weeks ago.
Fantastic.
So I am probably the worst hockey fan because here's the thing with hockey fans, and you probably picked up on it, is that they're very tribal in everything that they do. So ratings numbers for the NHL Stanley Cup always suffer unless a team like St. Louis and Boston is in it because no one in LA is going to watch the Blues and the Bruins anyway.
Right.
But if you have a strong number in St. Louis, it can carry the nation almost, like because it's kind of that diaspora from the Midwest. Same thing happened with the Blackhawks. So pretty exciting to see St. Louis win. But I think that we need to get into 2 things here on the NHL.
Yep.
First, I want to talk. Well, one we're going to talk about is the handshake line.
Yes.
And the second is why does the NHL, like to me, regular season hockey is the beauty of the sport. It's the greatest thing ever. And it needs to be, it's fast, it's flowing. There's penalties called. There's lots of power plays. We're seeing real, true, artistic skating. I mean, everything about it's great. And then you go to the playoffs, and it's just like slow as molasses. Just everybody's grabbing. There's no penalties being called, and it's horrible.
Which is interesting because historically, that's a flip, right? I mean, that's a flip on how hockey used to be. Hockey used to be slow. I mean, neutral zone trap fights every 6 or 7 minutes, and that was the regular season. And then by the time the playoffs came, you sent all your goons back down. They didn't play in the playoffs because everything was going to be cleaner, and there wasn't going to be any fighting. There were going to be repercussions for that. So it's interesting because what you're saying seems to be complete opposite of what it used to be.
Yeah, well, we were always into the, you send down the fighters in the playoffs, like you'd have that push. Overall, the slowness of it drives me nuts. And as an example, the top scorer in the regular season that was in the Stanley Cup Finals was Brad Marchand, who was 5th. But we were missing out on Kucherov. We were missing out on Kucherov of Tampa Bay Lightning, Connor McDavid, Patrick Kane. Like, these are the guys that make hockey super exciting. And Sidney Crosby, they couldn't even get into the playoffs because of the tight nature of how everything's called. And what the biggest ridiculous, the biggest thing is Ryan O'Reilly of the St. Louis Blues was the 33rd 32nd place in points, the top in overall for the St. Louis Blues in the season, regular season point totals. And he scored 4 goals, the first goal for each winning game 4 times in the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, he was the all-star offensive output, and he was the 32nd best in the regular season. That's a shame that that's your guy that's, leading the team in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's as I mentioned before, it's like these are the sports I'm starting to get more into, so I have these big gaps in times when I watched it. I mean, as I said, having family in Philadelphia, I was a Flyers fan. I mean, this is going to
You're the worst.
This is
the Flyers fans.
No, wait,
are the
it's
worst.
going to get worse. It's going to get worse. Wait for this, because growing up, my favorite player was Eric Lindros.
Of course. Well,
I mean,
he's all right.
Just those
Talk
years.
about a heel.
Huh?
Let's talk about the biggest heel in NHL history. Here's a guy that started born in Quebec.
Yeah.
Right? Like, pigeonholed as the number 1 draft pick, was the number 1 draft pick of the Quebec Nordiques, his hometown team. Mm-hmm. And he says, I am not playing for you.
Yep.
I do not want to, I am going to sit out a year so that I can re-enter the draft. Man, talk about a heel. You want to bring some heat to your,
it worked out fine for John Elway.
To your family barbecue,
yeah,
is you show up and you say, like, I don't even want to be here. Like, people are, oh man, but like, that was, I loved it.
Yeah, but and then how did Philadelphia thank him by basically letting him almost die in a bathtub, bleeding out internally and not even caring, and which is interesting because I was thinking about that today. Especially with what we're going to get to later with, like Durant and Klay Thompson and these, horrible injuries and how teams, what the role is of the team. But what I was going to say about, those days with Lindros and that era of hockey, it was before the blue lines were moved back. It was before a lot of the clutch and grab penalties were in place and enforced. And I still remember it was like, Flyers versus Devils, Scott Stevens. It was neutral zone trap. It was head hunting. It was just like, chippiness left and right. And at the time it was fun hockey to watch. But I think if you go back and watch those games now, the pace of that game and the scoring that you're talking about, I mean, it is such, and there's parallels in the NBA as well. It is such a better game now.
Oh, it's way better. The best thing to ever happen to the NHL, in my opinion, was the 2005-06 lockout, because they came back and they realized they had to get the fans back, so they changed the rules. Like, they started allowing the 2-line pass, which was awesome. So that means
huge.
That means the neutral zone trap wasn't going to work anymore. And then also they one of the most important rules, in my opinion, in professional game is that if you ice the puck, you have to stay out on the ice. So you're not allowed to change, but the other team can change. So it's a bigger penalty now. Like, you ice the puck because you're gassed and you're tired.
You can't.
Guess
go.
what?
Yeah.
You can't get off and then the other team can bring out the fresh guns or a better face-off percentage winner. That's super exciting to see all of that. So that changed. So here's a question do you think they need to increase the size of the nets?
I don't know. I mean, I think limiting the size of the pads was huge.
Yeah, they got to increase the size of the nets.
You think
Just
so?
give them an inch on each side. Yeah, because it's the goalies are so good now with and we're talking, I mean, hot goalies. The playoffs is all about the hot goalie. Who would have thought that it would be a rookie from St. Louis who hadn't played a game in the NHL until middle of January? The St. Louis story here is amazing. They were in last place
in January.
And then now are Stanley Cup champions. Fantastic. Great story. They rode the back of a goalie who last year was playing minor leagues in Providence for the Providence Bruins because St. Louis didn't have a space for him on their own AHL team. So he was teammates with guys he just beat.
Right.
On like a loan situation. I love it. Like, everything about this, like, congratulations for them. But you ride a hot goalie. St. Louis found it. It's exciting. I just, overall, are you of the feeling that when the game is over, the Stanley Cup is about to be issued, everyone's favorite moment is about to be here when Gary Bettman gets booed out of the building? It was great because his microphone wasn't on for the first part, and he's talking, giving out the Conn Smith to Riley. But Bill,
yeah,
the travesty that is the handshake line.
We're just skipping right to this.
It is the stupidest thing in sports. It is manufactured, and this is not sports talk radio where it's just a hot take. I hate it. And the thing I hate about the most is all of my friends that really love it. Because they're all like, this is the greatest thing about the sport. No, it's not the greatest thing about the sport. The greatest thing about the sport is that guys are riding around on steel blades with a puck, scoring, having fun. There's smiles, there's hitting, it's everything. That is the best thing about the sport. That's the greatest thing of the sport. The handshake line is a gimmick.
Okay. Just to tie up a couple loose ends here, I think you've sold me on bigger nets. I'm for that. Quickly before we get into handshakes, here's my question for you. Because you're talking about hot goalies, is the goalie the most important position in professional sports? More important than a quarterback? More important than, I don't know, closer in baseball? It is
in the team game?
In team sports.
Yes, I would. My instant reaction is yes. I'm sure that someone can pick up on some other things, but if you go down the main sports, so soccer, you have 11 players on the field, and the amount of touches, it's not as important. Baseball, either you've got a starting pitcher, but they're only going every 5 days, so then maybe you're looking at you're looking maybe your first baseman, but no, it's still not. There's still too much odds wise. Basketball would probably be the one that you're like, because one player can carry the team if they're a generational talent like LeBron. That being said, hockey consistently...
Well, I think it's quarterback. Quarterback's got to be the closest.
Nah, well, that's a good point that you bring up quarterback. I still think that you can run an offense through a running back or through, like we see Navy do it all the time on the...
the argument... Yeah, I mean, the argument against what I just said is somebody like Joe Flacco who, the Ravens defense basically won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I forgot he was even their quarterback. But I think that good points. But yes, the goalie is the most important position in team sports because of what we just saw in the Stanley Cup. What we saw with Dominik Hasek in the 2008 Nagano Olympics. He took the Czech Republic to win the gold medal. 1998 Olympics. So yeah,
goalie,
Hasek for sure.
Yeah, no goal. Yeah. I lived in Rochester, New York for a while, so I was with a lot of Sabres diehards as well. So I got to sort of live vicariously through what it's like to be a Buffalo sports fan, which is just amazing. I don't think there's anything like it in the country.
Well, what's crazy is they've actually had some good teams.
Yeah,
right?
Well, they were in 4 Super Bowls and couldn't. You got Norwood, you got Hasek with
the helmet. Hasek had the best helmet. Like we geek out about cycling kits. Let's talk about goalie helmets. Like the Hasek helmet was amazing. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, Brett Hull and all that kind of stuff. Okay, but regardless,
he was in the crease.
We're gonna go back. We're gonna try to get back on track a little bit here. And I was the one who derailed this, but handshakes. So. Tim, you are telling me that nowhere in that super rookie heart and soul you see this as a once a season show of respect for the two teams who have battled through 2 full seasons of hockey, made it this far, and this is the culmination of this. They've been battling, they've been fighting, they've been trading barbs on the ice, and this is it. You take off your gloves, you shake your opponent's hand, and the fans love it.
You're giving me a little bit of chills, but no,
nothing.
Because it's just the final dagger through the heart, man. Like I don't mind after NBA Finals last night. The game was over. There didn't need to be a handshake line. Like if there's someone you want to go say congratulations to, guess what? Go say congratulations to them, hug them, the way that Curry did with Kawhi. Like there's those built-in moments to get the photo while they're on the court. The standing in the line while watching the other team celebrate is the worst thing. Like watching Zdeno Chara, who's a warrior at 41 years old. Thank you for what you do, Chara, to make me believe that I still have it. He's standing there with a broken jaw, and he's just looking down at the ice and just waiting for them to be done celebrating, for them to realize, like, oh, I have to go through this pomp and circumstance of a handshake.
But
I don't know if the players like it.
He's a guy who's been there so many times. This is my thing, is that these are professional athletes. And I think that you as a fan are more upset by it than the athlete. Because you look at it and you talk about like athletes and you're like, are you still thinking about that? And they're like, no, that was, it's different for a championship. But you go game to game. They blew a play, whatever, lost a game. And they're like, nope, don't worry about it. Move on to the next one. And that's mainly what you hear. Joel Embiid being the exception.
He's so awesome. He's so awesome.
So, and another thing, I know when we were talking about this off air, you were like, well, if it's so important, why not have it every game, right?
Yeah. Why not?
Because it's special. It's the final culmination of the season. This is the cherry on the top of your hockey season.
I love Doc Emmerich. I love everything about Doc Emmerich. He is the greatest sports announcer that works television right now. His mastery of the English language and adjectives of passing the puck is, verbs of passing and all that is fantastic. Everyone should go watch it. But every single Stanley Cup finals, I have to listen to Doc Emmerich give this like eulogy for the handshake line, and it drives me nuts. It's just like, oh, the gladiators of men standing on the line, ready to shake hands, and it's just like, oh my goodness, like, oh, these are the captains that are going to lead the handshakes.
I got it, Tim. Here's where you may win me over. Here is the comparison to the handshake line that I'm still not sold that that one should go away, but here is my handshake line from your eyes. One shining moment in March Madness. Do you know what that is?
No, I don't. Sorry.
It is this horrible song that CBS came up with maybe 30 years ago. The ball is tossed, and it's just like this montage that they put together of the whole tournament that plays.
The montage after the tournament.
And it's always one shining moment. There's The Ringer has a podcast, One Shining Moment. That's their college basketball. It is
that's where that comes from. That's the name.
Haggard and just cheesy thing, which is just awful. It's just awful. And all the players now, half ironically, when they win, will start singing it, when they're getting their NCAA tournament. That if that is what you are seeing as the handshake line, I'm with you 100%. But that is something that's produced by TV, and I'm hoping there's something still genuine about these two teams lining up.
I don't know if it's genuine. I will need to learn. I just don't like it. Yeah. But then also I would take it one step further. I also don't like the green jacket presentation at the Masters. Like, oh, here's the guy that won it last year who you just beat. So now he's going to hand you another green jacket and put it on like you're in the fraternity to keep women out of a sporting event.
I'm with you there.
Masters anyway. Yeah. I'm like, this is... It all comes down to me like this tradition of what men are and gentlemen. Like we're going to wear our top hats when we're going to go out in public, and it's just like, come on, man, do away with it.
Do we get if
the players organically want to do it, that's fine. But I don't want to hear about before the start of the game, Doc Emmerich looking at the two captains of the team saying, these are the two men that 60 minutes from now will lead each other in the handshake line.
Yeah,
like that. Like it just drives me nuts.
Okay.
But anyway, let's get to the other exciting thing that happened last night. Basketball. The NBA Finals. Bill, I'm so happy you're into basketball. Little guy is really into basketball, really diehard, like actually a good player. So I've been kind of off and on Timberwolves fan over the years. Mm-hmm. But last year, because I used my parents' cable login, I've been watching a lot of Fox Sports North and a lot of Timberwolves basketball, and now I'm back all in.
Yeah.
We didn't go to a Magic game, so down here in Orlando, I'm probably going to get like a 10-game pack to go to Magic because they made the playoffs first time in 8 years. I'm loving basketball again.
Yeah, it's hard here because the Wizards are just atrocious and have been the biggest thing that the Wizards did was finally getting rid of their general manager. So hopefully they can steal Toronto's general manager. They're offering him like Michael Jordan money to bring him in, but he actually knows what he's doing. So maybe soon they can build a team. But
yeah, well, and then the whole like, there's so much to talk about basketball, like the rule changes and everything. But it's also like one of my favorite thing is this off season that we're now going into. So Okay, Stanley Cup Finals just happened.
Yep.
Sorry, that happened. They're going to go in their offseason, and yeah, there's a couple free agents that move around. But basketball, no other sport has, one player can influence a team, and then if you have two, you're going to be in the playoffs. If you have three, then there's a chance you're going to win the title. And, it's Golden State with the Splash Brothers. Like, that has been their thing, right? They got Kevin Durant to come over, and people were mad that Kevin Durant went to Golden State, which was already the best team, and then he just solidified it. So much to break down here, but I want to just say that, like, two things make me really excited about basketball. One is quantifiable, meaning that with a salary cap in place, it's pretty easy to understand. You have 12 players on the team. They have to make below a certain amount of money unless you want to pay a luxury tax. But then two of those players can, get max contracts or whatever. So it's kind of this interesting, like, how do all the puzzle pieces fit together to make the picture? And it's awesome. Like, the Wizards. I know for a fact that the Wizards, they're screwed because they have John Wall, who's he's a good guard, but he's got like this ridiculous contract that they're going to have to sit on for the next 6 years.
And ridiculous injury, so they can't get rid of him.
Yeah.
No one wants him.
So it's so much fun. Like when you break all that down.
Well, that's why I love it. And the thing that I think both of us love about cycling, other than it's not sitting through a 7-hour Tour de France stage, it's the narratives built around that. It's the stories of all the riders. It's the teams. It's going from one to the other. That's I think what we love about the sport. And
Wise Landa on Movistar, right? Like that's the whole Slow Ride podcast right there.
Right, exactly. So the NBA has that. An embarrassment of riches when it comes to that. And look, and we've been talking about the NBA offseason since the beginning of the playoffs. Like, you have the playoff games, and then you have to like talk about LeBron and the Lakers and tampering and Anthony Davis and who's signed what. I mean, we're what the just lottery? Happened. Like, Kyrie Irving just fired his agent and signed with Rock to
Jay-Z's.
Right, at Rock Entertainment. The COO of Rock Entertainment's twin brother is the general manager of the Nets.
Oh, he's going there.
Exactly.
Are you kidding?
But like, that is such an amazing storyline. How you don't get that anywhere else? And that's the kind of stuff that we're sitting there following day to day. And it goes in with all the injuries. KD, not happy in the
basketball's
Bay Area.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I left hockey last night. I was playing men's league, and I come out, and there's like a minute 47 left in the basketball game.
Oh, perfect.
And 6 of the people coming out were all like, "Oh, this is going to take a half an hour." Like this, like dejected bet, and you're like, "Well, no, actually, the rules have changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. That now you're limited to the amount of timeouts you have under 2 minutes, and then also, basketball's way cooler now. It's even more of a team game. So, Years ago, I was a Boston Celtics fan because my dad was a Boston Celtics fan. My dad was a basketball player. And like, I remember going to watch him play men's league, blow out his knees and kind of just like, do classic dad stuff. And he was really like kind of turned off when it came to the one-on-one era, that was symbolized by Allen Iverson, like practice, like we're talking about the practice thing. And at the end of the day, now basketball is almost back to the golden age of the Showtime Lakers against the Larry Bird Celtics, because now you're having much more team aspect, because there's the whole analytics part that's come in where now it's like, oh, 3-point shooting is better. But if it's an open 3-point shot, you're much more likely to make it. So you have much better passing. I love the idea of like watching a guy go down the court on a 2-on-1, which used to be like an alley-oop, slam dunk, highlight rule, like real, like you're going to get postered. And now they stopped to do like a 3-point jump shot on a 2-on-1 because mathematically it's better for them to do that even with the miss rate. Like they're only making 40% of them, but 3 points is always better than 2.
Yeah, it's even to the point that it's so many tangents here. It's changed pickup basketball in that what'll happen in pickup basketball, since now all the courts have 3-point lines, is that there will be a debate going on how you score the games, because usually every basket is just a point, right?
Yeah.
So then people are like, okay, well, if we have the 3-point line, that's going to be 2 points. Well, that's a much bigger get than if you play 2s and 3s. So there are different courts where, they'll have that argument, especially if somebody comes new in. If you're going to run 1s and 2s, you're going to run 2s and 3s. You should run 2s and 3s. That's more fair. Because 1s and 2, that means why ever take? I mean, that's double the points as opposed to just up by a third. But what I wanted to say with what you're getting at and how the game has changed is similar to what we were talking about in hockey. And it's the beauty of the NBA. So when I started watching the NBA, it was pound the ball on the wing and wait for the big man to get
finally get down
position
there.
And then fight it into him. And then he would, take 10 seconds to make a move and then try to force up a layup. And that was it. And there was, no zone defenses. There was illegal defenses. There was one of the best rules that people don't talk about is the defensive 3 seconds that now exists. So you just can't camp out in the lane. There's so many great changes that where I think for me where it started is you had the Bulls, you had the triangle offense, you had that movement, you had teams that got away from that and started winning because of it, and you had these dynamic players to the point now that you're making that we are like I grew up. In high school, because I was tall, I was a 4. A 4 meant you went and set picks and you rebounded. And then, as I got not as tall as I sort of aspired to be a better ball player, I was okay at shooting, and I was basically a shooting guard by the time I was done playing, even in rec league, because I was playing with guys who were like, former college guys. And now it doesn't matter. You're 7-foot guy. I mean, look at Pascal Siakam. Look at Draymond Green. They're bringing the ball up the court. There are times when Steph Curry, who you think is your point guard, gives the ball to Draymond Green, who you used to think is your center, to bring up the court. It's amazing. Yeah. I love how the game has changed like that.
It's so much more fun to watch. And then you've got all the off-court drama. It's kind of it's everything perfect right there. The players are visible. They're not hidden behind like a face mask.
Well, that's huge. That's why, that's like soccer.
There's personality. Like Joel Embiid.
Soccer and basketball isn't that why they're the biggest athletes in the world? Because you can actually see who they are.
See them? Can you imagine if Joel Embiid was a cyclist? Like his Twitter account and like what he does, even Kevin Durant, like it makes everything so much more exciting to watch, like the internal drama. There's so many different things, like you said, tangent wise. Let's get into the Kevin Durant thing.
Yeah.
Everyone knows about it. Blew out his Achilles tendon. Some would say, was he rushed back from his calf injury? There's now reports that they're trying to soften the blow, saying, oh, even if he waited until next year, he would have blown out his Achilles. Like the only way to repair this was to get the blowout and then to do the surgery. First off, Kevin Durant was a free agent next year.
Right.
Secondly, he had to have had a Lloyd's of London contract on his career, right?
Oh,
like, don't
sure.
you think he would? He definitely has insurance.
Yeah.
So because he's missing out on a big payday, do you, Bill, take the risk on signing Kevin Durant, knowing that he's going to sit out an entire year?
I think, and that's the thing. We're talking about like how much did this really cost him? He's going to get a supermax contract. What that number is, be it like 130 or 170 million dollars for 4 years. I think there are teams. I think that really changes the dynamic of where he goes. Okay, so if you
counterpoint real quick, how awesome would it be? Okay, this is not awesome. This is morbid Tim here.
Yeah,
but the Knicks are actually, for the first time in the Knicks history, because it was rumored that he was going to go to the Knicks, right? It would have been classic Knicks snake bite if he would have showed up to the Knicks and then the first game of the season after he's rested, then the Achilles goes.
Yeah, but that's
so at least now it's beforehand.
I know people are like going crazy because we're going all over the place, but we see that happen already. We saw like Anthony Davis, who was going to go to the Lakers, and then the Lakers were like, "Hey, Anthony, come here," and then he stopped playing, and then the Pelicans were like, "Well, screw that. We're not trading him to you for," I think the woman who owns the Pelicans, she was like, "Over my dead body. No way that guy is ever going to the Lakers. He has a year left on his deal. We're not trading him to you because you've basically messed with our team." And then he ended up not playing for the season, for the rest of the season. He just sat on the bench and he wants out of there. The players, this is my point though, the players that the Lakers were going to give up,
Yeah,
it turns
best
out
part.
2 of them got hurt within that time, and now it would have been an awful trade. So the Pelicans, by being stubborn, actually were super smart in this because, the 2020 hindsight, they turned out to be look like geniuses by not taking, Lonzo Ball, and I forget the other guy who has the blood clots.
Here's the best part: is that trade was being orchestrated by LeBron James and his people. And then, how would you like to be on one of the teammates of LeBron James the rest of the season, knowing that LeBron tried trading you? It's awesome.
It destroyed the team. But to go back to KD, so you mentioned the Knicks. I think it's still, unless he just signs with, it's now San Francisco.
Yeah, I know.
It used to be Oakland. Unless he goes back to Golden State, which may not be, as he looks back on that may be a decision that he makes, although there's a lot of accusations flying around from his camp. So I feel like that Golden Gate Bridge may be burning.
Well done.
I think the Knicks are still a viable choice because the other place where a lot of people saw him going, and we already talked about Kyrie Irving going there, is the Nets.
Yeah.
And if you bring in Irving, you bring in even Kemba who's out there, you bring in KD, and all of a sudden the Nets are a contender. They were in the playoffs this year. They're a contender. They want to be a contender next year. So I think that Durant is kind of off the table for them. The Knicks are the worst team in basketball, possibly sports. So
yeah, they're definitely, now that the Blues have won the Stanley Cup final, it's like the Knicks are maybe a Buffalo team.
And they've never had a player since Patrick Ewing who they just kind of, that David Stern rigged the draft for them to get.
Oh, yeah.
That has the kind of impact that Kevin Durant has, are arguably one of the top 3 players in the league, if not the best. So I think for them, if they had and they make tons of money, the Knicks, even though they're awful, which is just horrible. So
their owner is ridiculous.
Yeah, so they could just say, KD, here's your $30 million check. Go get better. We'll see you in 2021. And I think that's still a viable choice that I think is going to happen. I think he's going to be on the Knicks.
Are you okay? This is so much to talk about. So one of my favorite things about
even though
Nets,
no one's ever come back truly 100% from an Achilles rupture.
Well, there's that. But we're talking about the Knicks, the shit show that is the Knicks and James Dolan's ownership.
Yeah.
My favorite thing about the Knicks is that the owner, James Dolan, he controls Madison Square Garden Company. So he owns the arena that they play in.
I know where you're going
He's
with
the
this.
owner of the Rangers. The Rangers are actually a pretty decent NHL team. Like, he's done okay there.
Yeah.
But my favorite thing is that whenever a big concert comes to Madison Square Garden, the opening band always tends to be JD and the Straight Shot, which is James Dolan's band. Did you know I was going here?
Because they're like a bar band.
It's my favorite thing. Like, this guy is such a jerk in everything. Like, he's kicked fans out that have told him to sell the team.
Yep.
Like, that's like the meme that goes around is that you go to a New York Knicks game, you find James Dolan and you just yell, "Sell the team" to him, and then he'll like kick you out. Like, he's probably the worst sports owner. But no one can buy the team because the team's worth billions of dollars. It is the only team in the largest city in America. Like, this is, oh my God, there's so much good here. And then they're just such a horrible franchise.
Yeah.
But anyway, JD and the Straight Shot. Maybe we can find a way to make that our official sound or music for the show.
Well, who was it that isn't there a former player that he also
Charles Oakley?
Charles Oakley, yeah, isn't allowed.
Yeah.
Like, he just recently was allowed back in the Garden.
Yeah. Okay. Toronto wins the finals, right?
Yep.
And so floating around on Twitter, one of my favorite things was like 2017, the Argos won the CFL championships. 2018, the Marlies won the AHL championship. So, and then 2019, the Raptors win the NBA championship. So people were like, what's going to happen in 2020? So obviously people were like, oh, the Maple Leafs, who are actually pretty good, that town will burn down if the Maple Leafs win when they do. But like any good professional sports city, they forgot about their soccer team in MLS,
for sure.
Toronto FC, which actually has been really good lately, and they spend a ton of money.
Yeah.
They won in 2017. But anyway, that was one thing. how are you on like who is your favorite team in basketball? Is it the Phillies? Or sorry, the Phillies. The 76ers?
I like the Sixers, but I got frustrated by them. I don't think they are a good team right now. I think they're just they've almost gone the way of Daniel Snyder and the Washington football team, that it was just shiny objects that we're going to pull in and put on a team, even though they have no chemistry. And I think that's what happened with them.
Jimmy Butler?
Oh, yeah, with that this year there was just, Ben Simmons and just this whole hodgepodge of players that just didn't work well together. It looked great for a game or two, but they just fell apart. So I really, after that, even when they were playing Milwaukee, I liked Milwaukee. I like Giannis. I thought the Bucks were great. I was on that.
Giannis he's amazing. I like him better. You put out the tweet about how Kawhi Leonard, apologies.
It's hard.
I'm bringing over my slow ride mispronunciations here, but about how he's the most gifted player in the NBA, or one of.
Yeah.
Giannis,
for sure.
Dude is amazing.
Yeah.
If he was on any other team except Milwaukee, he'd be the biggest thing in the NBA.
Well, that's the thing.
But
it is similar to what Kawhi has done, although I think now we're seeing them for what they are, but the team that he led. And I think they really, and I don't want to get too, handshake line about this, but I think he really brought them up. He gave this team this confidence and these players who were okay players, and he basically, by his demeanor, created great players. I mean, we have the problem that team now has is that every team wants a piece of it now. I mean, who doesn't want Pascal Siakam on their team now? Even a guy like Fred VanVleet. Nobody knew who Fred VanVleet was, and all of a sudden he's like,
you crushed the Twitter
hero.
last night when you said the day started with I got Van Arted in the morning and then Van Vleeted in the evening. So who's your team?
So what I'm saying is that I'm a bit mercurial. And even in this series, I like.
So you're a league pass kind of guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and I like Golden State. I respected what they did. I love Steve Kerr and what he's done.
He's a quality individual.
Yeah, great individual,
right?
But also the people hate the offense that they run, and I love it. It's complex. It gives players the autonomy to make decisions. And to find, and it is so just when it's right, it's beautiful. The problem with it is it is so free flowing that they make a lot of dumb mistakes too, and that hurts them more this year when they were down players. But Klay Thompson's just one of the best players ever, and he's got like Steph Curry, but he's a guy who doesn't, unlike Durant, doesn't care. He wants to be out there and play and compete, and he's kind of like Kawhi in that it's like you almost have to remind Klay that it's a playoff game. He's just like big time. Here we go, and just gonna win the games. And I loved him, but about halfway through this series, I was like, yeah, I don't care who won, and then I was kind of pulling for Toronto. I liked that team. I like what they did. I honestly could care less about fans. They don't excite me at all, but we can talk about that. But one thing I do want to clarify for people, because I heard this so many times about Golden State, and I think it's just because I'm old that people don't realize or understand it. There was somebody who was given the credit, and it's true, it's like a blogger, for the name the Splash Brothers, right? Klay and Steph are the Splash Brothers, and they're like, oh, because of the Bay or this or that. Do you know why they are the Splash Brothers, the derivation of the name?
Because they splash the 3-pointers all day?
Exactly, right? No. 1989, Mark McGuire, Jose Canseco.
The Bash Brothers.
Oakland A's, the Bash Brothers.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a take on the Bash Brothers. They're the Splash Brothers.
So you were mentioning, I didn't know that. That's good to know. Thank you. Do you have, okay, so you mentioned the fans real quick. Let me just tell you something. There's one team in the NBA I hate more than anything, and it has 100% to do with the fans. And that is the Utah Jazz.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I want the Utah Jazz to lose every game from now on. There's no Like, I will go to a Utah Jazz game and openly cheer for the other team. The Utah Jazz, they're horrible. Like, I've never liked them. I was happy with John Stockton and his short shorts lost consistently. That was the only time I was excited when Michael Jordan was sinking the shots. You know, the Jazz, like they are the team that just like changed the name even. Like they kept the name the Jazz in Salt Lake. Talk about appropriation. Like that's the worst.
Well, I mean, as a Minnesotan, don't you feel the same way about the Lakers?
Well, yeah, it's the worst thing ever, but at least I kept the color scheme of my Minnesota Vikings.
So here's a couple things if we want to move on to fans. I think maybe it's just because I moved around a lot, but players move around. I'm fine with it. I hate it when people are like, "Oh, you have no loyalty to our city." I'm like, screw that. This is a job. It's a profession. People change jobs all the time.
Yeah.
If we talk about the NBA, and one of the reasons it's great is that it is a player.
Every 3 years it flips.
Yeah, and the players have the control, which is amazing. All sports should be like that. Through free agency and everything else, the players' union has done a better job than any other sport. I mean, baseball is going to go on strike because there's such an inequity in player salaries. Where here it's really a rise all boats, and it's what makes it just a great and dynamic sport, and it's different because these billionaire owners don't have control, and
that is the best part.
They hate it. So there was some things that came out with the fans this year. Everybody loved Canada and Toronto, and the Canadians are such nice people. And then you had some jerk Canadians who were booing, like waving and cheering when Durant got hurt. That looked bad, and then it all flipped. I'm like, that is going to happen in every city.
Yeah,
that's not a Toronto thing. You are always going to get, and I'm sorry if people take this as a derogatory statement. There are rednecks everywhere.
Yeah,
in the same, and there are
everywhere,
and there are bros everywhere, and there are people that are just dumbasses who get drunk and just behave badly. Let's talk a little bit, just for a second, as cycling fans, about Canadian fans. I've been to Mount St. Anne enough times and seen the crowds.
Is that really Canada, though?
Go back to the redneck statement. It's crazy and rude and just like off color and not something you really want to see. And I'm like, that's the Canadian fan I know. But regardless of that, I think that it's silly that people were turning on Toronto because some fans were idiots. It's just the most ridiculous thing because the team was like, "Hey guys, stop!" and they don't deserve that.
It's just the whole the snap judgment that you see on everything is just especially when it comes to the fans. But I'm excited for this offseason. I'm really excited because the Timberwolves got their act together. I just want to bring up the Orlando. They traded for Markelle Fultz or whatever, the former number 1 draft pick for the Sixers.
Yeah.
That has like that weird shoulder injury thing. So like this guy was like the blue chip stud of the NBA draft and then has played maybe 30 games in his career because his shooting motion now is all messed up. And they think it's because he's got some kind of like bunch of growth in his shoulder that is constricting blood flow to his arms. So his mechanics are all messed up and they got him for like peanuts.
Right.
And now you're like, ooh, man, if the Magic can bring this guy back, like this guy was at one time was the best player in the like NCAA coming into NBA. And then he just kind of never did anything.
Now they just got to, once he gets good, they can't be like, the Penny and Shaq days where, they get good and then Shaq takes off.
And that bring back the pinstripe jerseys. I do think that you and I need to do a NBA historical jersey draft.
Oh, yes.
Of kind of like, think about some of these awesome kits, like the old Sonics kit that was like the green and yellow, but then they went to that weird copper and forest green color, and then you have like the Atlanta Hawks jersey for a few years ago, and there was like just a giant hawk on the front of the jersey. Oh, there's some really bad kits.
Was the finals one of the best? Maybe you feel differently about this, but when Golden State wears their city kits and then Toronto wears the North kits, that's sharp on both sides.
I thought it looked really good.
Yeah.
And then that goes into let's get right into the Women's World Cup.
No, before we leave that, I'm sorry. This is going to be my hot take of the show.
Oh, wow. Sorry.
Biggest hot take of the show, and I'm going to try to do this in a way that two white guys discussing social issues maybe should or shouldn't do. But here's my biggest take from the Stanley Cup finals and the NBA finals was after the games were over.
Yes.
And this is nothing against, I don't think any of the players did anything wrong. And I think that like language for me, I always sort of, I don't like people saying there are bad words. I don't think there are any bad words. I think that's a silly concept. They're just words. Sometimes, words are contextualized, so they should be used in some instances and not in other instances. That's the way it is. But words are words.
Yes.
But in the and networks do a better job. Some networks do better jobs than others, and I don't care. I wouldn't bleep anything. I think it's silly. My kids have all heard fuck a million times.
Yeah.
They don't care. So that part is silly. But when the Blues were being interviewed, they were all excited. The number of F-bombs that went out there, and not just
when they picked up the cup.
Yeah, that was
like right away.
And that
fucking
was
right.
Yeah. And that was it too. And that was a little more, and I don't want to use forgivable, but you can understand that. That's just the way we talk. I mean, that's language. But when you're being,
I know right where you're taking this.
Where you're being interviewed, you should put on a professional, you should be professional about it. And that I think 3 or 4 of the Blues players all had multiple F-bombs in their interviews where they're supposed to be composed and answering questions. And again, I don't care. But what I saw was you contrast that to the NBA final. And
can you imagine if that happened in the NBA finals?
Everybody who answered a question, it was super professional. It was composed, it was done with respect, and there was no profanity. And what I saw there, and especially in the cultural landscape that we're in right now, is that was white privilege.
Oh, it's like
it was
prime
huge
example.
White
it's like
privilege that these guys for the same, and these are like guys who there's nothing against them. I'm just looking at this as an outsider that they are able to say this. They're able to get away with it. Everybody's like, oh, did you? And it's sort of cute. And I saw it 100 times on Instagram. It's sort of funny when the goalies, drop an F-bomb. If Lowry had done that.
Oh my gosh! Like I'm with you. 100%.
It would have been like, how dare they sully the game like this? How dare that these players don't have any respect? My children were watching, but we didn't hear any of that. They had to come back and apologize for the network being idiots and not knowing how to, follow their own procedures. But man, it was for me that really, really stuck out that the NBA guys know through experience, through life experience, that they can't do it.
Oh no, well, because they're at such a level now because of the oversight that is put on them, the amount of eyes that are put on these guys. I mean, look at how well that think of the pressure of being an 18-year-old, 19-year-old coming out of 1 year of college.
Yeah.
All of a sudden walking into a $150 million contract and all of that pressure that's coming on, and these guys, like they get it now to a level like they are so used to living with that oversight and that life experience that they're going to be treated so differently than the guys that are picking up the Stanley Cup and swearing every other second.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
without
they
a
can't.
doubt. Like
it's ridiculous. They have no room to maneuver, and they also, to the NBA's credit, is they do a real. And again, by the strength of the union and by the strength of the players in that league, they do a really good job, I think, or much better job than they used to, in basically putting these guys in school before they enter their NBA careers and teaching them. It's the media lessons, it's the how to take care of your money lessons, it's that all of us could use.
How to have the entourage and use the entourage correctly.
Yeah, so
right?
How to use a burner account on social media. All the important things that you need. But that was, I don't know. I don't want to be a downer, but that was something that just kind of
No, that's not even a hot take.
out.
It's a good point to also bring up because it's something that's clearly there. And I don't know, man. That's also one reason why I really like the NBA is that like it makes you think outside the box of so many different things because it's such a multicultural fan experience as well.
Well,
and we don't really get that fully in hockey, right? It's a lot of Canadians.
I had a little back and forth with somebody on Twitter about the whole. I sort of mentioned that on Twitter, not with the white privilege part, but just about a lot more F-bombs in St. Louis than there were. And Charlie was like, well, that's because St. Louis sucks. I was like, okay, there isn't anybody on that team from St. Louis. This is the majority of these guys are Canadian. So, and that was my other point. It was like, people were like, oh, Canadians, such, putting together a great team. I was like, well, there's one guy who has dual citizenship, UK and Canadian on the Raptors. Other than that, no Canadians on this team. So let's not put that on them, but it's great for the country that they have a team in there that won. But World Cup, let's move on.
Yeah, so let's get here. And I just want to say that the color combination of U.S. versus Thailand was my favorite kit combination so far because Thailand has these beautiful baby blue kits that looked great for the first 13 minutes of the game when it was still 0-0. And then the floodgates opened 13-0. U.S. looks really good. I still have concerns overall. Like if you look at how the bracket is set up, that there's more than likely going to be a crossover game with France, and that assumes that the U.S. Win out on against Sweden. But France is really good, and there's going to be a quarterfinal game where we're lined up against them that could determine. The U.S. put up 13 goals against Thailand. So many hot takes from grumpy old men. I loved every single moment of it. You're in it to win it. 13-0 would be great. Do I have problems with the Megan Rapinoe celebration coming over to the sidelines? I probably wouldn't have done it, but she seemed really happy. Her teammates really liked it. Like, it's their moment. It's their moment to shine. And they work their entire lives for this. They don't get paid equally to the men's team. They only really get in the spotlight once every 4 years. And you know what? Own it. And Thailand, at the 34th best team in the world, just learned a really good lesson. And that's don't mess with the U.S. women's soccer team.
Yeah. And I don't have
it sent a really good message for the rest of the tournament.
I don't have any problem with the number of goals they scored. I don't have any problem with the celebration. I have problems with the defenders of the amount of goals they scored and the celebrations. And here's what I don't like. First is the whole, well, they needed to keep scoring because of goal differential.
That's bullshit.
What is the goal? I mean, first off,
goal differential only matters in the group stage, and they're going to beat Chile too. So
the more important thing is win your games, and then goal differential doesn't matter. And if it does matter, it's going to come down to 2 or 3 goals, and you don't need 13.
Yeah.
So that's. 13. But again, so that was the thing. Well, they had to do this. This was the post facto reasoning on why they had to run up the score is for goal differential, and which is just crap in my opinion. The second one that you would hear a lot is they were showing respect for their opponents. That they didn't want to,
because they kept scoring.
They didn't want to Thailand to somehow think that they were not a worthy opponent by them pulling back, and playing in the, further deeper into the field and not attacking, and that was showing respect. You heard that from the commentary. That was showing respect for their opponents. That's crap. That's just complete crap. If you make the decision, if the coaches make the decision, hey, we're pulling back. We're, what you used to see in basketball. You see it in college basketball. Five passes before you can shoot when you're blowing out a team. And again, I'm not saying they should have done that, but that that is not. You don't have to destroy somebody to show respect for them. I think that Thailand would not lose any respect for the U.S. if they had maybe taken their foot off the gas in the last 15 minutes. Again, I'm not saying they should have, but I was saying that was the take that I was hearing, that I was just like, oh, that's just crap.
Yeah, I would say this is that what I liked about it was that they were still executing plays well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I felt bad for the Thailand goalie just because I felt that she was the woman that drew the short straw in the locker room. Like, okay, who wants to play goalie today? And like, I can't. Like, I felt a little bad there. They made it to the World Cup. That's a huge accomplishment. There's still such a disparity in the women's game between countries that have the ability to fully support a women's team versus those that do not, of which Chile and Thailand fall into, and also kind of how the women's game is viewed. What I do like about this World Cup more than any other is that you definitely have about 6 teams that can win this World Cup. So for the first time in a long time, you actually have the U.S. was going to win 4 years ago, maybe Japan. Like, you kind of just knew that they were the team. Now, like, all of a sudden in the women's game, you're looking at it, there's 5 or 6 teams that could win, and that's exciting. So you're starting to see a little bit more parity in the sport at the top level. I like that. And also, I think for Thailand to be able to come into the World Cup, you know what? They're in the World Cup. They're going to have a very winnable game against Chile. They can still do well, and it's only going to make them get better. I don't understand the women on that team. It is their job to score goals.
Yes.
Until they are told not to score goals, guess what? You're scoring goals. So if you have beef with it, maybe have it with the coach, but they're like a computer program. They execute as they're being told. And I don't like the soccer game of like, oh, we're going to pass 20 times back here before we even try to bring it up. I know they were executing beautiful plays. They showed how good they are.
It looked, and I know, and you're right on the Thai goalie also, in that she was being put in awful situations time and time again because of that execution, and it was great. And I'll tell you, and especially for the subs that came in the late game, you don't tell those women to like, hey, hold off. It's like, this is their time to actually. It's not only playing in a World Cup and just the honor of that, but for them it's a constant audition, right?
Oh yeah,
you're going in there like, who was it that scored her first ever World Cup goal? I don't even know, but like, that's a huge accomplishment. But B, it's also like you're still trying to get more playing time as this goes on. So you're not gonna pull back from there. Yeah. The one other comparison that I did, or rationalization that I heard that I don't know, I disagree with, because I think the criticism, silly criticism, again, I'm with you on this, that would exist, is that they were saying, well, if this was the men's team, I mean, one, it would be ridiculous for the men's team to do this because our men's team just is not at that caliber in the world.
Yeah.
But if the men's team were able to do this, that people would not have the same reaction. I disagree with that. I think that we are at a place in kind of national sensitivities that people would still be like, they should have pulled back. That one I didn't. I think there are enough other areas to go to the mat for comparisons between the men and the women's teams. The biggest one you talked about was the pay.
Oh, it's ridiculous. They profit off of the women at a level that is unheard of,
which
and
is just,
the men would never allow it.
Just insane, to the point that I would, if they decided not to play anymore, which they wouldn't do because they're too professional, that I would completely support that. But yeah, but don't you agree? Don't you agree that if the men were to run up on a team in the similar thing that completely overclass them, that the same criticism would exist?
And we may see that coming up in the Gold Cup, which is starting in June, because they're playing like Guyana.
Yeah.
And they're going to run up that score, or they would have the possibility, and you'll see that argument. I
mean, I on the other side, thinking back, and I think it's a different time, but and I think that maybe even this, tell me if I'm wrong here, maybe this is where some of this, respect the opponent thing comes from, is the dream team.
Oh yeah.
Remember when, it was these small. I forget the original countries that they were playing, but it was like Chad or something. You know,
Yeah.
where they're basically all asking for autographs before the
Yeah.
game and then getting beat by 75 points and then, and getting dunked on. It was like, oh, Charles Barkley dunked on me. What an honor.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where this is coming from, this respect thing, but I still think it's kind of silly. If you play the game, play it well, respect the game, then you're respecting your opponents too. It doesn't mean you have to keep like scoring goals. But I'm, again, fine with it if that's what you do. Just don't use that as an excuse for why you have to.
I'm excited for this tournament to get beyond the group stage,
Yes.
right? Because like that's when it's going to be like I'm going to the bar. I'm going to be watching it with a couple hundred people, like getting all in on it. Like we have to go through the Chile game. Like hopefully no one gets hurt, and then we get to Sweden, which will be a test because Sweden's always good. The Scandinavian countries. Basically, a rule of thumb in women's soccer is just if there's a lot of money in the country, then the women's team tends to be really good. And it's opposite of the men's game where like, you would see teams that just have like, are going to always be good. Argentina, Brazil, and their women's teams are just not supported at the level that they should be.
Well, we see,
biggest,
it's up until like the last year or so, Belgian cycling.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Tie it all in because, look at Marta, arguably the greatest women's player of all time for Brazil. And she'll never win a Olympic gold, which is like the second most important tournament for the women's game. And then also the World Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. But
Tim, I know that if we sat here, we could continue for the next 4 hours, and it would be no problem. In the fact that I think both you and I were so excited to
we didn't even talk about baseball.
Yeah, talk about some of these subjects we didn't do. We were sort of all over the place just to get it all in and try to at least keep it close to an hour, which we're a little bit over now. But man,
and there's still a lot to the summer coming up because we also have the Rugby World Cup coming.
Oh, jeez.
Which like I'm really into. But yeah, there's so much to discuss.
Yeah.
But I hear you. We got to go.
Yeah, this was awesome, Tim.
So we got to go to the handshake line. That would maybe be the second, conversation on what we call it. So
here's what we can. Hey, let's do this. We're going to the handshake line, which means you all should go to whoop.com.
So yes, you should definitely go to whoop.com for a variety of reasons, right? We've talked about it on the other pods.
This can be like the preem lap.
How to basically recover. Oh, the handshake line is the preem lap. Yeah. We should basically go there just to keep track of all your athletic strain and recovery on your Whoop wristband, to also the analysis that goes in there. That's pretty awesome. You should just use the promo code WAP.
Yeah. If that doesn't work, what's Slow Ride?
That's Slow Ride.
Just Slow Ride?
Yeah.
Or you can use CX Hairs. Pick whichever one you want.
But here's something else I want to get to. We're going to the Waterloo World Cup.
Yes.
UCI World Cup in Madison, Wisconsin. We're going to be pretty busy because we're going to have the whole Wide Angle Podium crew there. We're going to have a little compound. People can come by, maybe record some shows, little drops. We're very excited about Trek hosting us there. Maybe do some racing. Super stoked in September. What about a Sports Ballers pickup basketball game at the court across the street from the factory?
I'm in. Let's do it.
So who would be the best cyclocross racer to play basketball, do you think?
Well, I mean,
I bet Katie Compton could throw down.
I'll bet Katie Compton. Yeah. And the thing about cyclocross versus other disciplines is, they're kind of like one day classics riders. Also, they're not wispy. We get some on the men's side. You got some tall guys. I mean, you got a Wout who's I think over 6 feet. So Tone. I mean, these guys are.
Wout could throw down. Is he going to be there?
Yeah,
Wout will be there.
He
has to be there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll take him with first pick.
Yeah. So let's do this. I think the Sport Ballers Wide Angle Podium pickup game may have to happen.
Yeah, that'd be great. So, and then you can wear your Whoop wristband.
Yep.
That'd be awesome. Well, with that, I'm stoked. I love talking about sports. And if anybody's made it through this, thanks for joining along. And just let us know what you think on the Twitter.
Subscribe to the Part Spin on the Wide Angle Podium Network. And we're going to be sure to do this again. So we'll see you for episode 2.